This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Up until recently, the superhero genre dominated pop culture. These days, however, that dominance seems to have faded after one too many flops and a lack of innovation. In certain circles, this shift away from capes and crusading is something to be celebrated, but for me there will always be an allure with superheroes. Since my early childhood memories of watching Christopher Reeve as Superman, I've had a fondness for the DC universe. But beyond the page, the greatest superhero adaptation wasn't one for the big screen or even for live action. No, the greatest superhero saga began in 1992, with white eyes piercing black shadows. In 1989, the Tim Burton directed Batman movie was a gargantuan blockbuster hit. Not only did the film dominate the box office, but it also kicked off a merchandising boom of the kind not seen since the original Star Wars movie. The 80s and 90s were also a huge boon for comic books, especially DC Comics. The Comics Code Authority, which had heavily censored the art form since the 1950s, was losing much of its sway over the industry in the 80s, when DC decided to publish acclaimed works like Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns without the organization's approval. This gamble paid off hugely, with the industry's push into darker, more adult territory met with strong sales and critical acclaim well into the 90s. While a sequel to Tim Burton's monster hit was already in the works, the Batman rights holders Warner Brothers were looking for ways to capitalize on The Dark Knight further. They had already conquered the big screen and toys, so logically television was next. Batman had previously appeared on the small screen in the 1960s, in the form of Batman starring Adam West. Though a huge hit at the time, it was retroactively lambasted by hardcore fans of the character who accused the show of cheapening the source material. As it happens, the 60s Batman show was what introduced the title character to one Bruce Timm. In his 20s, Tim began a career in animation, working at Filmation on shows like He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. His career saw him hop between many different studios, including Don Bluth Productions and DIC Entertainment, before landing a job at Warner Brothers Animation on the studio's debut television show Tiny Toons Adventures. Though Tim would go on to be hugely influential on Batman the Animated Series, the impetus for the show came from the division's president, Gene McCurdy. McCurdy had effectively built the television arm of Warner Brothers Studios up from scratch, bringing over several of her former colleagues from Hanna-Barbera Productions. However, by 1990, McCurdy was growing tired of working in children's cartoons, and so when the edict came down from Warner Brothers to develop a Batman animated series, she jumped at the chance. McCurdy approached Bruce Timm almost immediately, as she knew he was a huge fan of the character. She also approached background artist Eric Radomski. Although Radomski was less of a fan, the trio all agreed on the general creative vision for the show. To understand how much of an impact Batman the Animated Series had, one has to understand the climate of television animation at the time. Though comic book censorship was waning in the 1980s, on children's TV it was alive and well. Saturday morning cartoons like Transformers and G.I. Joe, beloved as they are, were extremely limited in terms of content. Violence was heavily sanitized, sex references were completely off the table, and each episode often had to include an easily digestible message by the end. All of this was anathema to what McCurdy, Timm, and Radomski had in mind for Batman. Inspired by Tim Burton's film version and comics like The Dark Knight Returns and Batman Year One, the trio also drew from Dave Fleischer's iconic Superman serials of the 1940s. These comic book influences were also infused with a love of classic Hollywood noir and Universal monster movies. While Tim designed the characters, Radomski's experience as a background artist fleshed out the world of the show. Radomski combined the retro noir and gothic horror aesthetics into a look Bruce Timm would later dub Dark Deco. Radomski sought to capture the hard shadow look of films like Citizen Kane by drawing all of his backgrounds on black paper. Rather than darkening an image, Radomski brought the environment out of the shadows with the careful application of light. Timm and Radomski worked together to create a short sequence to sell the studio on their pitch for the show. The finished sequence, animated almost entirely on ones and set to Danny Elfman's Batman theme, demonstrates the duo's bold stylistic strengths beautifully. Following the screening, not only did the studio greenlight the show, but McCurdy promoted Tim and Radomski to lead producers. They had sold the show, now they had to make it. Their first task was assembling a voice cast. For that, they hired Andrea Romano, a veteran stage actor and director, to find the right actors for the job. Finding the right voice for the title character took a long time, with well over 500 actors either considered or auditioned.
And then we had one of those fine casting moments where an actor walked into the studio. His name was Kevin Conroy.
I had no experience with animation, and I just went in basically on a voiceover audition. I said, well, let me just come up with some voices. Let me just try some stuff. So I came up with this very dark, and I went into this whole other place that no one else had gone to, I guess. And I saw them all running around in the booth, and I realized that I had touched a nerve.
The room of producers and writers and people sat together and said, we are done. We have found the voice of Batman.
Kevin Conroy was a graduate of the renowned Juilliard Acting School, and initially began his career in New York on Broadway, before landing a role in the soap opera Another World. Later he moved to California, where he continued his stage career at the Globe Theatre, performing in Shakespeare and contemporary productions. Just as before, he soon segued into television work, such as playing lawyer Bart Falmont in Dynasty, and he landed regular roles on O'Hara and Tour of Duty. Conroy had little experience as a voice actor at the time, having only done a few commercials, but he was told to treat Batman like any other production. He later explained that he treated Batman as the real identity, while Bruce Wayne was the mask, a nuance which Bruce Timm and the other producers respected, and were immediately excited by how serious the actor was taking the role. Rather than searching for voice actors, Romano looked for what she called actors whose voices had character. Clive Revill was initially cast as Alfred Pennyworth, but he was later replaced by Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. Zimbalist was a veteran of stage and screen, best known for his roles on 77, Sunset Strip, and FBI. Though American, he was able to shift into a convincing English accent to play Alfred. Bob Hastings had extensive live action and voice acting work before taking the role of Commissioner Gordon. He had previously voiced Superboy in Filmation series The New Adventures of Superboy. Other actors with characterful voices included Robert Costanzo as Harvey Bullock and Lauren Lester as Dick Grayson, aka Robin. Playing Batman's arch-nemesis the Joker was originally Tim Curry, best known for his scene-stealing performances in the Rocky Horror Picture Show and Stephen King's It. However, Warner Brothers executives allegedly deemed his performance as the character to be too scary for a young audience, so he was let go. While searching for a new Joker voice, Romano reached out to Star Wars star Mark Hamill to see if he'd be interested. Hamill was a huge Batman fan and was delighted to take a stab at voicing the character. Unlike the other actors, Hamill chose not to use his normal voice, but instead create a new one for the character.
I was driving to the first recording session thinking, now how did I laugh? I'm on the freeways in Los Angeles. No, that's not it. No, that's not it. Now, I'm sure no one in Los Angeles would look twice at somebody. Look at that guy laughing maniacally in his car.
Unlike other animated shows of the time, Andrea Romano decided to have actors in a scene record their lines together, somewhat like an old radio play. This was done to give the dialogue a natural rhythm and chemistry, which would be hard to accomplish if each line was done separately. This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the only tool you'll need to create a beautiful looking website for your business, portfolio, or online store. I used it to create my production company's website, and I didn't know the first thing about coding. I just found a template that worked for me and customized it using simple drag and drop tools. And now the process is even easier thanks to design intelligence. By combining 2 decades of industry-leading design expertise and cutting-edge AI technology, you can have a brand new website up and running literally within minutes. Everything from finding a template to integrating SEO can be personally tailored to your needs. Jump over to Squarespace using the link below to start building your website and use the coupon code Rowan J. Coleman for 10% off your first purchase. Much of the actual animation work for the show was outsourced to various companies in Japan and Korea. A good chunk was handled directly by the Warner Brothers team, but they were primarily responsible for designing, boarding, writing, and directing the series. The design work also included stylized title cards for each episode, created by Eric Radomski. For the music of the show, the producers were happy to reuse Danny Elfman's theme from the Batman movie. However, Elfman himself was too high-profile a composer to commit to the actual series. One night, Bruce Timm was watching a documentary about Elfman's music for Batman and noticed that the conductor of the orchestra was not Elfman himself, but Shirley Walker, who was a composer herself. In another departure from animated TV shows of the day, Walker was given a full orchestra to score each episode with, to lend the series an operatic quality.
We did the voices for a good 6 to 9 months in '91, before any artwork came back. And then had to start doing ADR to sync up the voices. And Mark Hamill and I were in the ADR room together the first day. And they start in this sound room in this full screen with this symphony score comes up and this lights come on and this, full screen image of the show. Can you imagine what it was like to be sitting there? And we were both just, they came time for us to do our lines, we were both just staring like this. I looked at him, I said, did you have any idea that this is what we were working on? He said, I didn't have a clue that this was gonna look like this. It was breathtaking, it was so beautiful.
The first episode of Batman the Animated Series premiered on the 5th of September, 1992. If you're enjoying this video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, or if you want to support my work more directly, I'm also on Patreon. The first episode of Batman the Animated Series, On Leather Wings, isn't one of the show's strongest, but as a showcase of the show's style, tone, and overall atmosphere, it makes the ideal first impression to hook the viewer. After the previous decades of kid-friendly, stiffly animated, simplistic toy commercials, On Leather Wings is immediately striking with its dark deco style, fluid movement, striking compositions, and spectacular score. We're drawn in with a mystery as a police officer spots a winged bat creature passing by his aircraft.
Oh, there it is.
There what is?
It looked like bat wings.
And then thrown back in our seats as the blimp rises above the clouds, breaking through the fog into the moonlight as Shirley Walker's incredible music crescendos. Within minutes, the viewer is firmly rooted in this hauntingly beautiful world. The entire episode is replete with eye candy. There's an intricate use of hard shadows which wonderfully evokes that classic Hollywood noir style. At times Gotham City resembles an Edward Hopper painting. It's just gorgeous. The plot is relatively simplistic, a clever blend of noir mystery and gothic horror. When a spate of robberies occurs across Gotham, witnesses describe the perp as an enormous bat creature, implicating the Dark Knight in the crimes. It's a robustly written and plotted story featuring some terrific guest voices, such as Star Trek Deep Space Nine's Renee Auberjonois.
I thought maybe you could tell me if I have a bat problem.
And what if they are bats, Mr. Wayne? What then? Destroy them like insects?
The twists and turns are generally predictable, with the neurotic Dr. March being a rather obvious red herring, and the true culprit being Dr. Langstrom. However, the presentation is so sumptuous it doesn't much matter. The reveal of Langstrom as Man-Bat is strikingly well directed. Director Kevin Altieri's choice to reference Fantasia builds the creature up as a genuinely powerful threat, rather than the B-movie Ghul it so easily could have been. After a death-defying action sequence which feels ripped right from an Errol Flynn picture, Batman successfully subdues the creature and restores Dr. Langstrom. But like all the best gothic horror, there's always a lurking danger which threatens to emerge once again. On Leather Wings originally aired at prime time on Fox as a showcase for the rest of the series, which aired on Fox Kids. Targeting the series premiere at an older audience was a huge show of confidence on the studio's part. This was not the regular Saturday morning entertainment to occupy the little ones while parents read the newspaper. This was a very different beast, and critics and audiences took notice. Batman the Animated Series started strongly, but the best was yet to come. Though Bruce Timm and Eric Radomski's vision for Batman was clear from the outset, it did take some time to fully coalesce in the series proper. While On Leather Wings dazzled with its animation and atmosphere, few early episodes of the show surpassed it in terms of writing. Nothing to Fear, Pretty Poison, and POV are strong early episodes which further cement the mature storytelling and unique style. POV is especially interesting as it features no supervillains or bug-eyed monsters at all. Instead, it's a hard-boiled crime thriller which puts Harvey Bullock and the show's original character Renee Montoya front and center. Despite its short runtime, it's a compelling slice of noir which simply wasn't seen in kids' television at the time. An unsung ally of the series was Avery Coburn, who was head of the network's broadcast standards and practices. While her job was ostensibly to censor cartoons, she instead used her knowledge of the field to help the production team walk right up to the line of what was acceptable on children's TV. This meant Batman the Animated Series could get away with things contemporary shows never even attempted. This gave the show an edge and maturity which made it enjoyable viewing for kids and adults alike. It's arguable that without Coburn's help, gritty detective stories like POV and gothic horror tales like On Leather Wings never would have happened. Even so, the show's identity took some time to fully form, with some rather weak episodes early on in the first season. Christmas with the Joker and I've Got a Batman in My Basement are far too light-hearted compared to the other outings. Serviceable children's entertainment, but lacking the substance of most other stories. Meanwhile, The Underdwellers and The Forgotten are rare outright misfires. Both episodes struggled to reconcile their gritty subject matter with the show's tone and were ultimately hampered by network censorship. Reflecting on The Forgotten, Bruce Timm said, "I didn't want to do this show from the very beginning. Sean Catherine Derrick was big on doing shows with social messages, and my big problem with message shows is that you can't solve the world's problems in a half-hour cartoon. If you raise the issue of homelessness, what can you do? It makes the episode look very exploitative because you're just using the problem as an exotic background. You can't discuss the problem on any meaningful level in a 22-minute action cartoon." After these stinging failures, Timm and the other writers made sure to keep their focus squarely on character-driven stories. Borrowing a similar approach to Tim Burton's Batman movies, the protagonist of an episode is often the villain. As writer Paul Dini said, it was important to know the why of these characters. This focus on character is where the show excels. Even sillier Silver Age villains like the Clock King end up with great standalone episodes.
At 3:15 on the dot, those hands will come together, and you'll be crushed like an insect.
The success of this refocusing, however, is most apparent in the monumental two-parter episode Two-Face. In the run-up to his re-election campaign as district attorney, Harvey Dent is constantly hounded by mob boss Rupert Thorne. As the pressure mounts, a dark side of Harvey's personality awakens. Two-Face is another powerful statement for the series because it essentially concludes a subtly woven story arc throughout the early episodes. Harvey Dent is not a one-off character, but a recurring presence in many episodes, with established relationships with Bruce Wayne and Commissioner Gordon. He's someone the audience has come to like, which is why the events of this two-part episode pack such a punch. Villain origins as character studies had been done in previous episodes, but never in such depth and detail. Veteran character actor Clancy Brown puts in an excellent performance as the character. His voice as Harvey Dent is strong but pleasant and personable.
I want you to know that I voted for you 2 times.
Well, ma'am, I trusted was in 2 separate elections.
But as Dent's condition worsens and his temper comes out, Brown shifts the voice into growling shouts of anger.
You little weasel! I'll tear you apart!
A mid-ground between Dent's usual voice and the gravelly, guttural tones of Dent's other personality.
I'm going nowhere, Missy. If anyone's leaving, it's Mr. Goody-Good.
The animation direction is haunting and surreal at times, with abstract dream sequences and flashes of lightning which foreshadow Harvey Dent's eventual fate. A visual motif which is used to heartbreaking effect when this good man is finally overtaken by his dark side.
Harvey, what happened?
After Dent's downfall, Part 2 focuses more on Batman's guilt, giving us deeper insight into the Dark Knight than any previous episode.
Why couldn't you save me? Why couldn't you save us, son?
Though Part 2 has more action, the climax remains focused on character.
It's all right now, Harvey. I'm here.
The series boasted many strong episodes before this, but Two-Face is where Batman the Animated Series truly comes into its own, and it's stunning to watch.
For you, Harvey.
Considering how strong Two-Face is, it says something that an even greater triumph comes soon after in Heart of Ice. During a heatwave in Gotham, a series of inexplicably cold-related crimes puts Batman on a collision course with the formidable Mr. Freeze. Heart of Ice is not only a standout example of all of Batman the Animated Series' strengths, but it's also an example of the show elevating the source material. At the time, the comic book version of Mr. Freeze was little more than a gimmicky bank robber, and had been inactive since the Crisis on Infinite Earths event. Revamped on the page by Paul Dini and redesigned by future Hellboy creator Mike Mignola, Mr. Freeze appears in the animated series as a tragic and complex character. As Batman investigates Freeze's crimes, he uncovers his origins as a cryogenic scientist working to save his wife Nora from a terminal illness. But when heartless GothCorp boss Ferris Boyle interrupts the experiment, Victor loses his wife and is transformed into the vengeful villain.
Yes, it would move me to tears if I still had tears to shed.
Heart of Ice is an astonishing piece of work, filled with iconic, beautiful imagery, astounding music, brilliant vocal performances, and rich poetic dialogue. The episode is anchored by Michael Ansara as the Sub-Zero villain. It's a striking performance, robotic and cold, but with just enough hints of emotion to remind the viewer of the good man Freeze once was.
To never again walk on a summer's day with a hot wind in your face and a warm hand to hold. Oh yes, I'd kill for that.
The icy motif, once a simple gimmick in the comics, becomes a powerful visual metaphor in the episode. Victor Freeze is literally frozen in time, unable to get back what was lost and unable to move on. He is trapped, frozen in place with only frozen memories, which can never again give him the warmth he craves.
I can only beg your forgiveness and pray you'll hear me somehow. Someplace where a warm hand waits for mine.
Heart of Ice took home the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Writing in an Animated Program. It is an award well deserved for what might be my favourite episode of the entire show. As well as Batman the Animated Series does tragedy, it's by no means tragedy all the time. A key part of the show's success is that it knows when to have fun with some solid action-adventure, like in The Cat and the Claw. As a terrorist plot unravels across Gotham, Batman encounters daredevil thief Catwoman, while Bruce Wayne finds himself attracted to Selina Kyle, Catwoman's secret identity. As hard as Batman's big screen outings have tried, none of them have come close to capturing the bristling chemistry and intricate dynamics of the Bat and the Cat's relationship as seen in this two-parter. The numerous chases and fights between the two play out like elaborate flirtations, with a clear indication that they have each finally met their match.
Never trifle with the affections of a woman. Until next time.
And there will be a next time.
For as much rightful praise is given to Kevin Conroy's Batman, I've always felt Adrienne Barbeau's performance as Catwoman is extremely underrated. It's strong without being snarky, and sultry but not too obvious.
Have you told the police you found your cat burglar?
Not yet.
The cat and mouse games extend to both characters' alter egos, as Selina Kyle and Bruce Wayne orbit each other in a dynamic reminiscent of Cary Grant and Grace Kelly in Hitchcock's To Catch a Thief. They maintain a veneer of harmless high society schmoozing while still investigating the simmering conspiracy from different ends without giving their true identities away.
Where'd you learn to drive like that?
Oh, I've been going to the Paris Grand Prix for years. You know, one of these days I think I'll enter it.
The only weak point of the two-parter is the villain, Red Claw. Though strikingly designed and well voiced by Star Trek Voyager's Kate Mulgrew, Red Claw isn't nearly as interesting as some of the show's other original villains. That being said, the plot works well enough to facilitate a healthy mix of fights, chases, and Bondian action set pieces. If Red Claw was the main focus, the episode would be quite forgettable. But thanks to Catwoman's inclusion, the two-parter is an engrossing slice of action-adventure.
Something for you to remember me by.
A far more successful original villain appears in the H.G. Wells-inspired See No Evil. When ex-convict Lloyd Ventrix discovers his estranged family are soon to move out of the city, he uses an invisibility suit to commit a spree of robberies to start a new life with his kidnapped daughter. Despite the domestic drama trappings of its premise, See No Evil plays out more like an eerie ghost story. In the opening scenes, Shirley Walker's score underpins a subtle uneasiness as Kimberly greets her imaginary friend Mojo, in reality her own father rendered invisible.
A better life somewhere else, huh? Where your dear old dad can't find you, that's what she really means. I won't let her, you hear me? I won't let her.
The episode also uses silence and emptiness effectively, forcing us to wonder where exactly Ventrix is in the frame, if he's there at all. Rather than playing out amidst Gotham's towering skyscrapers, this story occupies back alleys and suburban wastes. And that small scale adds to the drama, keeping the focus on personal stakes so it can effectively build to its thrilling climax. All that being said, this is also one of the funnier episodes of the series. Because of its mundane settings, the writers make great use of pedestrians and background characters for beats of welcome humor.
Who are you? I know you're in here.
I didn't know he could fly, too.
It's truly impressive how well the tonal balance is struck. It carries a maturity like the rest of the series, but with Batman embodying the hero in a children's tale, the crusader for good who rids the family of their ghost.
No!
Peekaboo.
Usually the overtly kid-friendly episodes are the weaker ones, but See No Evil works brilliantly as a Batman bedtime story.
Kimberly? Who are you talking to now?
Just Batman, Mommy.
Oh, him again.
Childhood also plays a big role in our next highlighted episode, Beware the Grey Ghost. When a mad bomber goes on a spree of destruction mirroring an old TV show called The Grey Ghost, Batman tracks down the show's lead actor to help catch the culprit. These days, but especially in the 90s, many self-proclaimed hardcore Batman fans ridiculed the 1960s Batman series starring Adam West for supposedly being unfaithful to the character, being too light-hearted and cheesy. 80s, 90s Batman media like The Dark Knight Returns, Tim Burton's movie, and the animated series itself were seen as course corrections which finally did justice to the character and washed away the blotch that was the 60s show. It's ironic then that Beware the Grey Ghost functions as an extended meta tribute to that series by stunt casting Adam West himself as former Grey Ghost star Simon Trent.
I'm not the Grey Ghost.
I can see that now.
This is more than a simple wink to the audience. The metatextuality underpins the emotional through line of the entire episode. In the episode, we learned that The Grey Ghost was a rather silly superhero show, and yet it provided Bruce Wayne with some of his few remaining happy childhood memories. Not only that, but it inspired him to take up the Batman mantle later on in life.
As a kid, I used to watch you with my father. The Grey Ghost was my hero.
So it wasn't all for nothing.
In a sense, this is Bruce Timm's love letter to Adam West's Batman. After all, as mentioned earlier, the 60s series introduced the character to Tim in the first place. Beware the Grey Ghost is a story about the power of superhero stories, how they can inspire both morally and creatively.
The Grey Ghost was my hero.
Really?
And he still is.
Though Batman the Animated Series is often praised for its dark tone and mature storytelling, it never shies away from what some would dismiss as the sillier parts of the mythology. This is why the series does such a good job handling the character of Robin. Ever since the embarrassing failure of the movie Batman and Robin, the Caped Crusader's sidekick has been largely sidelined or ridiculed in mainstream pop culture. No movie adaptations after Joel Schumacher's infamous flop have featured the character in his proper form. The Dark Knight Rises referenced the character in spirit, and Batman v Superman had the character killed off before the events of its story. Live-action adaptations which have dared to feature the character have felt the need to somehow legitimize him by making him even darker, grittier, and more violent than Batman himself. But the writers behind the animated series understood how to utilize the character well, and made sure to introduce him early on in the series as a pre-existing part of the mythology. Far from cheapening Batman's character, Robin's presence offers compelling dramatic potential. Potential which is explored to its fullest in the episode Robin's Reckoning. When Batman learns the name of an extortion ringleader, he suddenly refuses to let Robin join him in the investigation. As Robin probes further, he discovers the mob boss is Tony Zuko, the man who killed his parents. Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson's backstories mirror each other in obvious ways. They both lost their parents at a young age and channeled their grief into a crusade against injustice. But whereas Bruce Wayne was left alone to wrestle with his trauma, he becomes a surrogate father to Dick Grayson, the much-needed support system to help Grayson become a better version of Batman himself. This is why versions of Robin which downplay his colourful costume and friendly demeanour miss the point of the character entirely. Robin is supposed to be the healthier version of Batman. The tension underpinning Robin's reckoning is how Grayson risks succumbing to despair in a quest for revenge against Zuko, building to an emotional climax which crystallizes Batman and Robin's familial bond.
Zuko's taken so much, caused you so much pain. I couldn't stand the thought that he might take you, too.
Come on, partner. It's been a long night.
Robin's Reckoning also showcases the writing team's talents for Batman-light episodes, such as Joker's Favor. When mild-mannered accountant Charlie Collins accidentally curses out the Joker, the Crown Prince of Crime lets him live only if Collins promises to do him a favor in the future. 2 years later, the Joker calls in the favor to help kill Commissioner Gordon. Joker's Favor is notable for introducing fan-favourite Harley Quinn, but for now it's worth highlighting Mark Hamill's Joker. These days, there's a lot of overhyping the Joker, with many actors hoping to flex their talents in portraying the character. But few live-action adaptations of the Joker, other than Heath Ledger's acclaimed performance in The Dark Knight, have ever seemed to truly get the character more than the animated series. Portraying Joker as nothing more than a chaotic psycho is a very shallow reading of the character. The animated series' take on the character as a criminal mastermind with a sick sense of humour is far more interesting. The Joker is certainly psychologically damaged, but for the most part his clownish eccentricities are used as a misdirection to keep his enemies off guard. Which is also why he can be such a dangerous adversary. It's unclear where his comic persona ends and his real emotions begin. One misplaced word could easily set him off, creating a palpable tension around the character at all times. This is where Charlie Collins finds himself in Joker's Favor. Like something out of a dark fable, no matter where Collins flees, Joker always finds him. And in that fable tradition, Joker's eventual defeat comes at his own hands when he seemingly pushes Collins over the edge.
Tomorrow, all the papers will say is that the great Joker was found blown to bits in an alley, alongside a miserable little nobody. Kind of funny.
Only for this to be a clever ruse by both Collins and Batman, essentially beating the Joker at his own game.
Oh, very funny. A million laughs.
Go home, Mr. Collins.
Home. I never thought that could sound so good.
Joker's favour is merely one among many examples of strong Batman-light episodes. Another such example is the terrific The Man Who Killed Batman, but the best of the bunch is the effervescent Almost Got Him. While playing cards in a criminals-only dive bar, Joker, Penguin, Two-Face, Poison Ivy, and Killer Croc regale each other with stories of when they almost killed their mutual foe, Batman. Each story in this mini-anthology feels like a one-shot ripped right out of the comics, full of creative imagery and interesting action. But what makes the episode so special is the framing device. Visually, it's gorgeous, with some of Eric Radomski's most beautiful background work, made up of abstract shapes of light and shadow. It literally paints a picture of this smoky, villainous club. The interaction between all the rogues is wonderfully written, animated, and voiced. Never before had so many of Batman's villains shared the same scene in the series, with all of the regular voice actors giving bravura performances in their back and forths.
You're still looking halfway decent.
Half of me wants to strangle you.
And what does the other half want?
To hit you with a truck.
The way they play off one another feels like old friends just hanging out shooting the shit. Ivy and Two-Face take shots at each other while the Joker eggs them both on, and Penguin tries to keep some decorum. And then there's Killer Croc.
Hey! There I was, holed up in this quarry, when Batman came nosing around.
And?
I threw a rock at him! It was a big rock.
The vocal performances are great on their own, but there are also loads of little fun details in the animation, like Joker sneaking a look at Two-Face's cards and always having an ace in his hand due to cheating. The revelation of the framing device being a sting operation so Batman can save Catwoman is yet another clever twist, providing one final bit of quintessential Batman action for the finale. This is Batman the Animated Series in its finest form.
Almost got him.
Batman the Animated Series was an enormous success. While The Dark Knight's big screen adventures commanded mainstream interest in the character, the animated series had been quietly building up a vocal base of admirers and fanatics of all ages. Batman Returns had performed well at the box office, but its graphic content and dark tone worried Warner Bros. Executives. While the studio retooled plans for future live-action Batman movies, there was an opportunity to keep the brand fresh with a slate of straight-to-video animated movies. So while still in production of the show, the animated series team were suddenly tasked with bringing their Batman into a feature film. Writer Paul Dini took the first stab at it, coming up with a story in which the inmates of Arkham Asylum put Batman on trial in the Ultimate Villain crossover. However, Dini realized the idea made Batman too static, as he would be captured for most of the runtime. Instead, the concept was used for a later episode in the series called The Trial. Alan Burnett, another writer for the series, devised the winning idea. Taking direct inspiration from Orson Welles' Citizen Kane, his story would recount an untold chapter of Batman's origin while introducing a new villain, bringing with it a phantom from Bruce Wayne's past. The creative team started production when Warner Bros. Suddenly decided to give the movie a theatrical release with a $6 million budget. This left the team 8 months to complete the film on time. They went back over their initial scenes, which were created in Academy ratio, and filled in the sides to make it full frame. They also created a CG version of Gotham City to be used in the backgrounds, but due to the tight schedule, it was only used for the opening credits. Shirley Walker, the regular composer for the series, also lent her talents to the movie. Rather than repurposing Danny Elfman's theme again, Walker incorporated an original theme she had created for the show. To give the film's score a grand operatic quality, Walker made use of a male and female choir to chant and sing in Latin chorus, though Walker later confessed that the Latin was simply the names of various staff members read backwards. Batman Mask of the Phantasm was released on the 25th of December 1993. I won't beat around the bush here. Batman Mask of the Phantasm is my favourite Batman movie of all time. I loved it when I first watched it, and it only gets better every time I revisit it. As good as many of the live-action Batman movies are, none of them have had such a powerful and interesting take on the character as Mask of the Phantasm. The animation in the series was already great, but the extra budget allocated to the film and the efforts of the production team make Mask of the Phantasm truly stunning. Tim's character designs and Radomski's backgrounds have never been combined so beautifully, but it's Shirley Walker's score which has the biggest leg up on the series, which already had outstanding music. The opening theme is the most spot-on sonic evocation of the Dark Knight ever made, far surpassing Danny Elfman's iconic theme. Deep bellowing drums and powerful horns propel every action cue while the strings create a palpable atmosphere. The score is appropriately ghostly and otherworldly for the Phantom, sweeping and romantic for the love scenes, and operatically bombastic for the climax. There's only so much praise I can give this score without devolving into frantically repeating, "Just listen to the thing." It is Walker's absolute masterpiece. For me, what makes Mask of the Phantasm the best Batman movie is that it provides us with a greater insight into Bruce Wayne as a character than any other version. Other efforts like Batman Begins explore the psychology of the character well, but Mask of the Phantasm shows us Bruce Wayne's heart. Episodes like Appointment in Crime Alley and Perchance to Dream rendered Bruce Wayne's inner world in creative and compelling ways, but Mask of the Phantasm adds dimensions to the character we've never seen before. In this untold chapter of Batman's origin, Bruce Wayne falls in love with Andrea Beaumont, a whirlwind romance which could have prevented Wayne from ever becoming Batman.
I know I made a promise, but I didn't see this coming. I didn't count on being happy.
What makes this idea so radical is that it completely inverts Batman's origin. Bruce Wayne's transformation is usually framed as a rise out of the darkness. He channels his guilt and trauma into a drive to bring justice to an unjust world. He goes from a frightened young boy into a heroic knight. Mask of the Phantasm, however, paints Batman's origin as a tragedy, when his final chance at true happiness is cruelly taken away from him. The relationship this all hinges on is exceedingly well written. Dana Delaney, who voices Andrea Beaumont, instills the character with a classic Hollywood charm. She's one of the few people who can relate to Bruce on an emotional level, having lost her mother at a young age.
It's just that when I talk to her out loud, I can imagine how she'd reply. I can hear her, like she's right there.
The banter between them is rich with wit and poetry, as if lifted out of a Billy Wilder film.
It's been 3 days since we met and still no calls. I figured you must be dead or something.
You expect every guy you meet to call you up?
The ones that are smart enough to dial a phone.
They become each other's rock, the one bright spot to give them hope in an otherwise dark world. It all serves to make the sudden end of their romance authentically heartbreaking. The Phantasm then appears in the present as the figurative ghost of a better life the two could have had. Batman's life as a vigilante, contending against criminals and on the run from the police, pushes him to a more desperate place than ever before. Meanwhile, the Joker takes up residence in the ruin of the old World's Fair, the symbol of the future Bruce and Andrea hope to have. Mask of the Phantasm still packs in plenty of the action, spectacle, and humor we've come to expect from a Batman story, but its greatest strength is that more than any other movie, it makes Batman feel like a real human being. An extraordinary but fallible person with hopes and dreams he never saw realized. It's a moving story of heartbreak and loss, an operatic epic, deeply moving and tragically beautiful.
I'm sorry. Do you want to be alone?
I am.
Mask of the Phantasm unfortunately failed to break even, grossing only $5.6 million at the box office. However, it did become popular on home video and won widespread acclaim from critics. Siskel and Ebert, for example, featured the film in their show At the Movies, in which they stated their regret at missing the film in theaters.
That's a scene from Batman Mask of the Phantasm, a Batman animated feature that was made in 1993, and Roger and I never reviewed it, and as far as I'm concerned, we made a big mistake because it's terrific.
You know, I think that the day is coming, and it's also happening with the Disney pictures, when adults are realizing that animation is not limited to an entertainment form for children. It's interesting that they really did have a story, more of a story than the movies. And the characters, and they pause, and they think, and they have feelings and motivations, and you get involved in it.
Though not a big screen success, Mask of the Phantasm's home video sales led to further straight-to-DVD features like Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero and Mystery of the Batwoman. While neither of these movies managed to live up to Mask of the Phantasm, they are still solid Batman adventures full of the sharp writing and stunning animation characteristic of the series. Sub-Zero and Batwoman only fall short because Mask of the Phantasm sets such a high bar. On the small screen, the series continued into the mid-90s. Later episodes broadened the scope of the show, focusing more on supporting characters like Robin and featuring more Batman-light episodes. In some broadcasts, the series was even retitled as The Adventures of Batman and Robin. Despite the demanding production schedule, the talented team behind the series showed no signs of losing creative steam. Episodes like the aforementioned Trial continue to use the established characters well and explore new facets of the mythology. But perhaps the biggest indicator of this broadening scope is the numerous stories featuring Ra's al Ghul. As the immortal international criminal mastermind, Batman's clashes with Ra's al Ghul take on the style of turn-of-the-century pulp adventure stories. Their travels often take them beyond the boundaries of Gotham to exotic locales fraught with danger and mysterious hidden corners of the globe. As a fan of the genre, I've always appreciated the Dark Knight's swashbuckling outings with Ra's al Ghul. The recent incarnation of Ra's al Ghul as the head of the League of Assassins feel like they barely scratch the surface of what's possible with this villain. The animated series also had the good fortune of landing British thespian actor David Warner to voice the part.
Allow me to introduce myself. I am he who is called Ra's al Ghul,
the demon's head.
A casting which embodies the character's intelligence, cunning, and formidability.
Well? Are you man enough to face your better?
Through Ra's al Ghul, the series further expands the DC universe. In the episode Showdown, a flashback story takes us back to the Old West for a rollicking Jonah Hex story. As a fan of steampunk fiction, I've always had a soft spot for this episode. This is not the first or last opportunity the writers took to cross over Batman with another DC character. Previously, the magician Zatanna teamed up with the Dark Knight for a fun caper. While Zatanna's magical abilities are excluded from the episode, later the series goes full fantasy with a crossover with Etrigan the Demon. This is not just a Batman show, but a gateway to an even more fantastical universe than the viewer could ever have imagined. There's so much more to the Dark Knight than prowling the streets of Gotham. Back on those streets, however, Batman has another run-in with Poison Ivy in the episode House and Garden. After being released from Arkham Asylum, Pamela Isley, aka Poison Ivy, appears to be living a normal life, married to a loving husband and taking care of 2 young children. But when a mysterious poison-secreting creature appears in Gotham, Batman suspects Ivy is up to her old tricks. Poison Ivy was originally introduced in one of the stronger early episodes of the series, but none of her outings matched the greatness of Two-Face or Mr. Freeze. That is with the exception of House and Garden. Among the show's fans, few ever mention this episode, but I think it's incredibly underrated. Poison Ivy feels estranged from humanity, finding kinship with plants more than people. This is what drives many of her episode plots, facilitating solid action but little substance. The focus of her episodes is still on character, but Ivy's motivation skirts close to the shallow messaging which Bruce Timm realized early on was not one of the show's strengths. House and Garden, however, finally provides that depth to Ivy's character. At first, the story seems to be standard fare, with some slightly silly-looking plant monsters on the loose, but Ivy seems to be genuine in her desire to live a normal life.
Batman? Good luck.
You too, Mrs. Carlyle.
But as the mystery unravels, the episode takes a sharp left turn into some truly disturbing territory.
Mommy.
No.
It isn't possible.
Mommy? Mommy?
With this horrific twist, the truth of Ivy's character is revealed. Though she despises mankind, on some level she's still seeking human connection. Her ecological crusade is driven by hatred, but also a longing to be loved, and to love in return.
For what it's worth, I believed her. When she told me for the first time in her life, she was happy.
Later in the season, the writers once again flex their talent for creating original characters in the episode Baby Doll. Baby Doll is one of the most unique and interesting characters the writers created for the show. As a former sitcom star, Mary Dahl suffers from a rare disease which stunted her aging. Her eponymous episode sees her kidnap her former co-stars to relive the glory days, a dream which is shattered by Batman. Like many of the best episodes, Baby Doll evokes a great deal of sympathy for its villain. Unlike Batman's other rogues, Mary Dahl has no larger goal beyond recreating her old show. There's no master plan to wreak havoc on Gotham or destroy any institutions. Life simply dealt her a bad hand, and her best chance at happiness was ruined partly by her own ego.
It was hard for me out there. I studied and trained and auditioned, but no one wanted me. Over the years, I remembered how happy I was with all of you around me and the folks at home watching me each week. Me. Baby Doll.
The episode is almost Tim Burton-esque in its blend of innocent, child-friendly imagery and violence. A nightmarish tale which makes the viewer feel for its antagonist on a level no other villain-centric episode of the show ever quite managed to do. A much more light-hearted episode is The Lion and the Unicorn. When an old British intelligence acquaintance of Alfred's calls him back to Britain, Batman's butler is soon roped into a terrorist plot by Red Claw. To be perfectly honest, The Lion and the Unicorn is good, but not a great episode. I'm only mentioning it as it's an excuse to talk about the brilliance of the animated series version of Alfred Pennyworth. He is pitch perfect as Bruce Wayne's forever loyal caretaker and friend. Dutiful and loving, he stands by Bruce no matter what.
I know your father will be proud of you, because I'm so proud of you. Now come on, it's time for chicken soup and a good night's sleep.
But it's his wit which makes him so memorable. No other Alfred is this sassy.
She and her father were very fond of you.
I was a different person then.
Yes, intense, driven, moody. She'd never recognize you now.
Why, you're the very model of sanity.
Oh, by the way, I've pressed your tights and put away your exploding gas balls.
Thank you, Alfred.
It might be amusing.
Well, anything to amuse a lady. If lady is the word I want.
He's the perfect counterbalance to Batman's shadow-dwelling brooding.
With all the compartments on your belt, you'd think there'd be one for tissues.
What would we do without you, Alfred?
I shudder to think.
The constant presence which reminds us all that, at the end of the day, this is a superhero show. It's okay to laugh.
Well, you'll be happy to know I've drawn you a bath.
What's the deal, Alfred?
I said I drew you a bath, sir.
More laughs are to be had in the episode Make 'em Laugh. When the Joker brainwashes a group of stand-up comedians into going on a crime spree, Batman finds himself contending with some very odd adversaries. The episode is filled with good humour, but the clear high point is Batman's run-in with the Condiment King. The fact this persona actually succeeds in intimidating and robbing others is already funny.
Hot sauce! Anyone else want to be a hero?
But it's the stream of puns which must have had the writers in stitches as they conceived the episode.
Parting is such sweet and sour sorrow. I knew you'd catch up to me sooner or later. How I've relished this meeting. Let's see if you can cut the mustard. Oh, quiet!
The character was created as a nod to the many silly villains of Batman's Silver Age comics. This is the kind of parody only fans of the source material can create.
I'll get you for this, Batman! No one upstages me and lives!
However, the original run of Batman the Animated Series concludes by bringing another member of the Bat family to life in Batgirl Returns. Batgirl, aka Barbara Gordon, was first introduced in the two-part episode Shadow of the Bat. Just like the show's great portrayal of Robin, the animated series incarnation of Batgirl is fantastic. Rather than another parental tragedy sending Barbara Gordon down the path of vigilantism, she is inspired to become Batgirl out of pure heroism. She sees injustice and, inspired by the Dark Knight, takes action to confront it. While Batman strikes fear into the hearts of his enemies, and Robin goads them with quips, Batgirl wears her heart on her sleeve. More than Batman and Robin, she fits the bill as a Zorro-esque swashbuckler with an acrobatic movement style and a wonderfully flamboyant theme. In Batgirl Returns, the title character teams up with Robin and Catwoman to track down a stolen jade statue while Batman is out of town. It's an entertaining street-level adventure full of the show's robust action scenes, bristling dialogue, and top-quality animation and voice acting. As the final episode produced, the show doesn't bow out with a grand finale, but Batgirl's successful sophomore outing bodes well for the future of Gotham City.
It's okay. There'll be another time.
Batman the Animated Series ended its original run in 1995, but the DC Animated Universe was just beginning. The following year saw the debut of Superman the Animated Series, created by the same production team. Though not as groundbreaking as Batman series, Superman the Animated Series was another success, boasting healthy ratings and critical praise. As the Man of Steel continued his small-screen adventures, Bruce Timm et al. Turned their attention back to The Dark Knight, when Warner Bros. Asked for a new Batman show to run alongside Superman. Titled The New Batman Adventures, the series is often folded into Batman the Animated Series as the final season, as it is a direct continuation of that show. However, to make it more cohesive with Superman, the creative team revamped the art style. Bruce Timm's blocky character designs and Eric Radomski's black paper-painted backdrops were retained, but overall the look was simplified for more consistent animation. The dark deco look was less emphasized, no longer featuring Radomski's iconic title cards, and much of the setting took on a more Jack Kirby-inspired look. Most of the same voice cast returned for the series, however Melissa Gilbert, the original voice for Batgirl, was replaced with Tara Strong. Lauren Lester returned as Dick Grayson, but by this point Grayson has moved on to become the superhero Nightwing. A new Robin, Tim Drake, joins the Bat family, voiced by Matthew Valencia. By this point, Kevin Conroy's Batman voice had also changed significantly. In older episodes, Conroy's Batman voice had a husky quality to it.
Careful, Robin. I'm sure there's more to this than meets the eye.
But throughout the series, Conroy's voice became fuller and less breathy.
I didn't think you'd mind some company.
In the new Batman Adventures, the voice has lost all trace of its earlier grit, instead solidifying into a commanding baritone.
Joker's got the bomb and he's gonna use it tonight.
In my opinion, this is most certainly a change for the better, and likely helped Conroy perform as the character for as long as he did, without damaging his vocal cords. The character design changes are a mixed bag, however. For the most part, the Bat family are all very successful, Batgirl especially with her black and yellow colour scheme. Most of the villains are simply refined in some way, with simpler, bold line work. Joker, however, is too simplified, with black, lifeless eyes and missing lips. He looks a little too much like Freakazoid for my liking. The worst redesign has to be Catwoman though. She looks far too young, like a child dressed up in a Halloween costume, as opposed to the seasoned criminal who can equal Batman. Adrienne Barbeau's voice simply doesn't match this look. The best redesign though has to be Scarecrow. What previously looked like a cheap Halloween costume is turned into pure nightmare fuel. The character also sees a change in voice actor, with Jeffrey Combs taking over from Henry Pollock II. Some regard the new Batman Adventures as the weakest season of Batman the Animated Series. Due to the loss of the Art Deco title cards, redesigned characters, and more abundant action, some have accused this era of being more kid-friendly than the classic run of the show. This perception isn't helped by the new Robin, Tim Drake. While Dick Grayson hovered around his late teens, early 20s, Tim Drake is most certainly a child, perhaps meant to appeal to younger viewers of the show. While I lament the loss of the classic Hollywood influences, it would be inaccurate to call the new Batman Adventures toothless compared to the original run. In some ways, it's actually more graphic than the previous seasons, with Batman visibly bleeding in many action sequences. And while Tim Drake is a literal child, the circumstances of his joining the Bat family are anything but child-friendly. His origin episode sees gangsters trying to murder him to get to his estranged father, who as it turns out is already dead. Tim Drake is a kid forced to grow up too quickly, having had to survive on his own in the slums of Gotham. Like Dick Grayson, Batman becomes a parental figure to Tim Drake, and for the most part, Batman orders him to keep away from danger, while Batgirl serves as his primary crime-fighting partner. Meanwhile, Nightwing is a solid addition to the core cast, building on the great foundational drama between the characters in the episode Old Wounds.
The game's over, Batman. I quit.
Robin, wait.
There are also numerous episodes which could have easily skewed into light-hearted entertainment, but instead stay the course as straight-laced drama. For example, in the episode Never Fear, Batman loses his sense of fear after being hit by a new weapon from Scarecrow. Any potential funny hijinks are sidestepped in favor of a story which sees Batman become a secondary villain, no longer afraid to kill.
I can't! You'll kill me!
Death is death. Does it matter who administers it?
No! No!
The episode Over the Edge is another good example. Though the ending is a disappointing cop-out, playing out the scenario where Batman's secret identity is blown and he's on the run from the police and Bane carries an appropriate level of intensity. In the moment, it's a shocking and dramatic half hour. However, if there's anyone who still doubts the new Batman Adventures as a worthy continuation of the original show, look no further than the episode Mad Love. Reeling from another botched attempt at killing Batman, we see Harley Quinn's origin in flashback as she tries to please Joker by finally defeating the Caped Crusader. Of all the original characters created for Batman the Animated Series, Harley Quinn has had the biggest impact by far. The character was conceived mostly by Paul Dini for the episode Joker's Favor, intended as a one-off henchwoman for Batman's arch-nemesis. While at college, Dini made friends with comedian and actress Arlene Sorkin. After seeing her play a court jester in a dream sequence in an episode of Days of Our Lives, he knew she'd be perfect to voice the character. Following her debut episode, Harley Quinn exploded in popularity almost immediately, which caught the production team completely by surprise. In almost every subsequent Joker episode, Harley Quinn became a mainstay villain/anti-hero.
You're really sick, you know that, boss?
The Joker himself would even take a back seat in episodes like Harley and Ivy, Harley Quinade, and Harley's Holiday. The character was soon incorporated into the DC comics, eventually spinning off in her own series, making the leap to the silver screen in multiple movies, and even starring in a recent solo animated series. Mad Love is adapted from Tim and Dini's award-winning one-shot comic story. Like many villain-led episodes, the story reveals Harley Quinn as a complex and tragic figure, trapped in an abusive relationship with the Joker. The content of the episode pushes so-called kids' entertainment to its absolute limit in its portrayal of domestic violence.
You always take shots from folks who just don't get the joke!
For all of the Joker's elaborate villainous plots, nothing is quite as disturbing as his treatment of Harley.
My fault. I didn't get the joke.
It's a story which brings these comic book characters far closer to reality than perhaps we'd like. The new Batman Adventures ended its run after a single season, bringing the solo adventures of this Batman to an end. The final episode produced is the rather underwhelming Judgment Day, but the broadcast order ended the series on a high note with Mad Love. However, as we bring this retrospective to an end, I'd like to highlight another episode, Legends of the Dark Knight. In the story, a trio of kids wander Gotham streets at night, regaling each other with stories of what they think Batman is like. It's an amusing anthology paying tribute to various comic stories and art styles, from retro kids' entertainment.
Call the police so they can round up these clowns. Well done, old chum.
to gritty 80s graphic novel.
This isn't a trash heap. It's an operating table. And I'm the surgeon.
But what I like most about the episode is the celebration of all these different interpretations of Batman. Even Joel Schumacher's campy take is given an on-the-nose reference.
I love Batman. All those muscles, the tight rubber armor, and that flashy car. I heard it can drive up walls.
And yet, it isn't ridiculed. The kids debate which is the best version, but the episode makes clear that all interpretations are valid. And this is ultimately why Batman the Animated Series is my favourite version of the character. I've said in older videos how I dislike so-called realistic, dark, gritty takes on the character, because realism is ultimately reductive. That approach can only exclude elements from the mythos. But Batman the Animated Series, with its dark deco setting, gothic atmosphere and noir style, offers something for everybody. It can do hard-boiled detective stories, fantastical creature features, swashbuckling adventure, pulpy science fiction, and even magic-infused fantasy. It can do all that and still have compelling, interesting characters with genuine relationships and rich drama. It is everything a superhero show should be. A big part of that enduring appeal is due to Kevin Conroy's performance as the character. His greatest asset is his range. Conroy displays a versatility in the part which no other Batman actor comes close to. He has a voice which can comfortably handle long bouts of exposition, badass one-liners, affection, and humour. Obviously he was aided by excellent writing, but Batman's characterization is helped tremendously by Conroy's talents as a performer. This Batman is one for all seasons, brooding and tragic and fun and heroic when required. No one else who has ever played Batman has demonstrated this kind of range. They could pull off some aspects of the character, but not all. But crucially, Conroy's Batman is a fun character. He is playing a superhero after all, something his live-action counterparts would do well to remember. This is why Conroy's Batman is essentially immortal, timeless, and exists beyond the confines of the show. Conroy reprised the role for multiple movies, shows, video games, and even live-action television, cementing his status as the voice of Batman. His Batman feels as though it has always existed and always will exist, on the pages of comic books, the flicker of TV screens, and in the hearts of everyone who loves Batman. Thank you for watching. I know this is a little outside my usual wheelhouse, but I've wanted to make this video for so long that I just had to finally get it out there. If this one does well, then I'll make more retrospectives in the DC animated universe covering Superman, Batman Beyond, and much more. If you want to see those videos, then give this a like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. You can also see videos early, uncut, and ad-free by joining my Patreon. I'd like to thank all of my patrons and members whose names are currently scrolling by, with an ultra thanks to Alex Miller, Eamon Kelly, Michael Hardy, Ian Hodge, County Ark, Mike Halsey, Retro PC Gamer, Benjamin Stokes, Hiroshi the Dog, Movie Magic, Charles Borsam, Olivia Computer, Bano, Extreme Streamers, Tom, Dusk, Colin Camille, Patrick Fleming, Matthew Camille, Ed Mark Starr, Dylan Thomas, Lilac Yane, Howard Craig Kervik, and Caging G. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, have a good one.